then we can do that and share my screen. And we will share screen 2. Share. There we go. So if you use if you open up Unreal, you have to use the shortcut key, that the shortcut that's on the desktop. Otherwise, it doesn't open with the Unreal thing.
Okay.
And then I just made a scene, but it does, you don't need all of this junk in there. In fact, I'm going to take all of this garbage out. So take all that out. Static meshes, volumes, sky and fog. Don't need any of that. Lights, fine. We don't need players right now. We don't need actors. Start background. Audio, cue, and that's going to be, yeah. Okay, so just going to go. I'm going to do a import. So I'm going to do a file. And I'm going to do actually. Yeah, I'm just going to put this into a Rigg. I'll just make a new folder and do Rigg. Did you guys get Unreal up, or are you gonna follow along? Or
I'm gonna move forward once I have it.
okay, all right,
I have it open.
okay. So have you used 5 before or 4.7?
Yeah, I started with 5.
Oh, okay, all right. So then you know about popping this thing up.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just gonna import the Rigg, and so I made a new folder. And I'm going to right mouse click and then do import. And import Rigg into game. And then I'm going to go to my transfer. And then there's sailboat Rigg in the transfer drive. So then in here, we're just gonna go just want to make sure that I have all of the stuff in here. So all of that's going to be fine. Import mesh, import skeleton. In advanced, I just want to make sure that I import the morph targets. Just some morph targets in there. So you just need to make sure that that's added. There's no LODs. There's no animation right now. Or don't need any animation. I think everything else should be good to go. Import all. And that should be good. So now we should have our skeleton. I double click on that. Might take a second. There we go. And so sailboat's in there, and then we can also see that there is the joints all in there. Okay, so that's looking good.
I just always know what it's like.
And then we just need to make sure that the plugin is enabled. So I'm going to enable plugins and just go to Control Rigg. And it looks like control rig is set up, so that's good. So we don't have to, is yours on there?
Which one?
Control rig.
Oh, yeah, I have that.
Okay, good. So that is what we're gonna need to do. So I'm just gonna go back to my thing here. And I'm gonna right mouse click on this, and then I should be able to create. And let's see. Animation montage, no. They moved it.
Go for it.
No, she said it was extra. Because we were donating.
Create.
So she said,
Oh, there it is. Okay, so it's, you have to do it on the skeletal mesh. So right mouse click on that, and then there's create. And then control rig off of that. So now we have our control rig. So we can double click.
How did you do that again?
It is on, so I right mouse clicked on the skeletal mesh.
Mhm.
And then I went to create. And then control rig.
Oh, okay, got it.
Oh, you can jump on real quick if you want. We aren't that far along. So all I did is I just imported the boat, and then you just need to make sure that you have the plugins, the control. And then it's the control rig. You just need to make sure that is,
why? Like, is it
because we're gonna create a rig.
okay,
So we're gonna rig this thing, and
Okay.
we're gonna do it using, yeah, we're gonna do it using control rig. So control rig is like Unreal's way of their system of rigging things up. So, but you need to have your stuff, you need to have your, your geometry attached to joints, and then,
so. Question.
Mhm.
You can just upload just the FBX mesh and then just sprig from scratch.
yep, that's what we're doing. That's basically what we're doing, because the rig that you had in there is gone.
Oh.
It's not in there. You have the skeleton and the
Oh.
geometry attached to the skeleton.
Is not-
The rig that you made in Maya doesn't come along with the FBX. If you have animation on there, it will, put the animation in there, but it
Okay.
just has the geometry. So, so I imported it in, and then on the skeletal mesh, we just right mouse clicked, and then you have this option down here for create, and then down here to control rig. So when you do that, then it makes this little control rig. It makes a control rig thing that if you double click on it, it will then open up the control rig window. And we can just take the tab here and just drop it up at the top, because we're gonna need it full, or we're just gonna be using that right now. So it's gonna be full screen. So what this does, by doing it this way, you could also create a control rig by just right mouse clicking anywhere out here and then going to animation and then control rig, wherever it is. Control rig there.
It
and-
needs the plugin too, right?
This all from the plugin,
Okay.
yeah, are these things. But I could create a control rig, but if I just create a blank one, then I have to attach, then I have to go find my geometry. Here, if you just do it from the geometry, it'll already do all of the attachment stuff. And what I mean by that is, like, in our preview scene, the mesh is already attached. So that's just the difference there. Okay, so the way that this works is that we have a forward solve. So this is all going to be FK, forward kinematics. So this is going to be like a straight up, if you were to just kind of group things together and move them around and that kind of hierarchy. We can do a reverse rig that will do like inverse kinematics if we wanted to, but that it's basically the same thing, only tell it to do all the things in reverse. And then under our rig here, our graph, I am looking for the rig hierarchy. So in the rig hierarchy, we have all of the joints. So this is the like sailboat, the overall one, right? And then we have, this is the one that's gonna get animated.
Mhm.
Yep. So what we have to do is we basically have to create an object to move this thing around. So on this joint, I'm gonna right mouse click. And then I am going to, where is it here? On this, I'm gonna do a new, and then I'm gonna do a new control. So then in that control, you can see that it's a new boat one. And then what we can do is we can just keep creating like a hierarchy of just the way that it's done in the boats. Hello.
Like filling in, it's like connecting what you have already
It
to the skeleton.
it's going to not connect what we have already, but it's going to create like a rig here. So
Okay.
the way, if I wanted to create this rig, I could left click and drag out, and then I can let's see, get control. And then in here, so I just clicked and dragged this out, and they got the control. And then the type in here is going to be a control, and then I can change, let's see. Maybe that's not what I wanted. I wanted control. Boat name. Hold on, give me 1 second. Control boat. When in doubt, let's do this. Let's go control rig documentation. So this is, I'm looking at the full body FK. There we go. So in here, it has some really pretty straightforward kind of documentation on how to set up control rigs and like draw limits and things like that. So let me just find the toolbar. Let's there's a better page than that one, unless they changed it. Oh, quick start. There we go. Yeah, so so here, this is part, so we already did the control rig, we created it. We have our head, we did the new control. And then with this control down here, they end up like doing an ungroup, or what did they say? It's a shift P. So I do like shift P, will get it out of the geometry, like out of the hierarchy of the group here. And then we come down, and then we can take the control shape. So if I just select this, get rid of this garbage. So if I just select this right now, it is a where was my shape properties? Here's the shape. So I could take this and have this be like a circle. We'll do circle thick. There we go. And then we can just take the scale of this and then lock this and then bring it up. And we should start to see, there it is. So we can see in here that it's creating that circle. And then we can just take this rotator and say, I want to rotate it around the X, and I could do this as 90. If I had my key there, take that as 90. And then I could scale that up a little bit more. And so this would be the main control that I'm going to use for my boat. Right. And then in here is where I tell it, okay, get the boat control, and I'll like, I would do like a get the boat control, and then you tell it what you're going to be controlling, and that all goes down into here. So you get a transform item, and you tell it to get control, and then once you get the control, then you set the bone, so the control then drives the bone. So this transform of the control goes into the bone. All right, so for you guys that are just joining us here, what I did is if you go onto your desktop and hit the Unreal editor, it's the UE5. Have you guys used Unreal before?
No.
No? Okay. All right, in for a treat. So if you open that up and then you do a file new, I don't have the, I'm opening up the editor now. So you should have a window that looks like that. Yep. And then you can go into and just go to like games and then do a blank project. And then we're doing a, you don't have to have starter content. If you shut that off, it'll just kind of open up faster. So from there, we just did the project location. If you click on the little manila folder, then go to the desktop. And then I just clicked on desktop and then hit select the folder. So then it's just going to my desktop. And then this is going to be your project name. The way Unreal works is it works in a project. So everything just kind of gets contained in this thing. So whenever you have to move it somewhere, you have to just take the whole project with you. So then we name the project, and I named mine. I forget what I named mine, like garbage trash or something like that. Something goofy. Yeah, test trash. So you can name your project whatever.
To know my sailboat is trash.
Well, I set this up before I started doing the sailboat, so that's
fine.
That's not on you.
No, it was trash when I first got it.
First
so,
guy, yeah.
Yeah, I had to re-rig it and everything. So.
All right. So let me know when you get your window looking like this when that opens. Are you following along or? Okay.
It has mountains but a cloud.
That's fine. That's fine. If you want, you can see them over here on the side. You can delete those mountains or clouds. You can leave the clouds. You can just select the geometry. I don't know where the mountains are. You can just click that and hit the delete button, and it'll go away. So the other thing about Unreal is that if you want to move around, it's like your left mouse button will move around like this. Or if you've ever played any first-person shooter games, you can hold your left mouse button and then hit W, and that will kind of like fly you around the scene. And it's W, S will move back, A and D will move left and right. Or you can left mouse click and drag, and that will move you. If you hold your left and right mouse button and then move up and down, that will move you up and down. Okay, so what we did is we imported the boat. So we're going to create like a boat rig here. And so the way that we're going to do that is if you just hold control and then tap your space bar, this little window code comes up. If you click off of that, it goes away. All that is just this little content drawer in the bottom. It says content drawer in the lower left. You can click on that. That'll also bring it back up as well.
I'm all for docking it in like.
Yeah, yeah, you could click on dock and layout, and then that becomes a part of the system. If you're an old fuddy-duddy, then you can do that. No, it's just a way to kind of like clear things out. But what we want to do is we want to import in this boat. And the way to import it is you just right mouse click and then do import into game. And when you click on that, then you can go to this PC and then transfer. And then in the transfer is the sailboat rig. It's this PC. And then the transfer. And then sailboat rig.
The way I did it was that you click on you just open up the file explorer, transfer drive. Yep. And then you just drag and drop Sailboat Rig right into the
Or you can drag and drop. Yeah, that'll work too.
And
then when you click on,
don't import all yet. There's one thing you need to click.
Yeah, so when you
I don't remember which thing we have to select for that import.
yeah, it's it is under, hold on a minute. If I do import with new, re-import with new file, and I'll do my this PC and then transfer and then sailboat. Did it not give me the options? Didn't give me the options. Well, here, I'll just kill this. Delete it. So right mouse click, I'm going to do import into game rig. I'm going to find my sailboat. And then it's the things that you have to make sure to import here is under advanced. There is a right here, import morph targets. So those will come in. Okay. And then we import all. Import all.
And you can just look that up.
Yep. And then just import all. And then all of those, yeah, just close this out. And now we should have 3 things in here. So these 3 things that come in, like really there's just geometry and joints, but Unreal likes to have physics assets in case you want to have some dynamics happening there. We have the skeleton, which is just going to be like the joints that are in our model, and then the geometry that that makes it look like the boat. And these 2 things are actually connected, but it brings them in as separate objects so you can deal with them separately. What we want to do is we want to click on the skeletal mesh, and then we right mouse click on that. Oh, here, this is for you. This can be really annoying when this little window pops up. To get rid of that thing from going in there, you just go into your console and then just type delay. And then what you're looking for is this slate tool summon delay. And if you click on that and do a space and do like 2 or 3 and hit enter, now that'll pop up after like 3 seconds.
Wow,
Isn't that nice?
it is nice.
So now it doesn't just pop up right away. So
No, because it's very annoying.
it's very annoying. Yeah. It took me forever. It took me like maybe like 2 days to figure out where that was.
Wow.
But so you just go in the bottom, just start typing delay, and then just scroll down to slate. And then you click on it, and that puts it in here, do a space, and then 3. 3 works good for me.
I'm writing that down.
Yeah, that is a tip that you definitely want to write down because that gets annoying. So anyways, we have our 3 things. And then what I want to do is we are going to right mouse click on this on the skeletal mesh. So you have the 3, the skeleton, the physics asset, and the mesh. We right mouse click on here and then go all the way up to where it says create. And then we're going to click on control rig. Okay, and then it makes this control rig thing. Now, what this is the way that Unreal has provided for us to be able to create rigs for this thing. So if you have this window, we can take the tab and just click and drag it up to the top. So it's going to be full screen because it's just going to live full screen here. Okay, so what I can do is if I want to move around in here, if I hold Alt and then left mouse click, and I can click and zoom around in here. So it's just Alt and then left mouse click. What's that?
You just double click on control rig.
Oh yeah, just double click down,
That'll pop up.
just double click on that. Yep.
Drag on this tab right here, like this tab itself to add it to.
And I'll just click and drag. Yeah, these tabs you can move and you can take off the actual tab.
Tab itself, yeah.
Yep, just click and
And then
tab.
Just, yeah, move it on the bar right here.
That way it takes up the full scene, the full screen. Now you can go back and forth between your scene and the rig that we're going to be working on. And then if,
Add this focus, so if you click on something, you press that, it'll
Oh,
like
yep.
center on that, so you can orbit around it.
yeah, same as Maya. Well, what you're going to find out is as we animate here, the animation controls are the same as Maya in here as well too. So my kind of goal is to kind of move everybody off of Maya.
Well, I'm coming from Blender, so.
Yeah, so you're set. Because then you can go from you could put all your skeleton and mesh in Blender, export it as an FBX and rig it in here.
Could you export FBX of like the rig or like the animation and put it into Maya or Blender, or is it only?
No, that's where the reverse rig comes into play. Because what you can do is you can then apply the animation that you pull in onto the rig.
Okay.
And it will move and animate, and then you right mouse click and say bake to control rig, and then it will make the control rig move in the way that your animation is, and then you can just start animating in that rig in Unreal.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I figured it would.
But,
Be that easy.
Yeah, but you have to just make sure that you do the separate rig to do the inverse. It's not a huge deal. It's just extra steps. More than probably what I have time for here. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we need like a control to be able to work this boat. So what I'm gonna keep this like extra super simple. I'm just gonna do like the overall movement of the boat, right? So we can move that around, and then we'll get the sail part in that we'll twist the mast in there so we can have it. Maybe, yeah, we'll see how we do. Let's get the main part of the boat going first. Okay, so in here, you might have to click on the rig hierarchy tab. So you click on that, and then we have some joints. You can click on those joints and it will show you those joints in here. There's a little tiny baby joint, but there are bigger joints in there. We have the, oh no, this is geometry. There we go. These are our joints down here. So this is all, yeah, what?
That aren't named are all basically the ropes. By the
Okay, all right, okay.
Everything,
Okay,
everything else that's important is named.
so this root body, okay, so this is gonna be the main, that's gonna be the main group, the main joint that we're gonna kind of animate around. Yeah, would that make sense?
Yeah.
Or should I do the root? No, the root.
The
Let's,
root, yeah, I think the root and the body are the same. I have
well, it looks like they're positioned
yeah, I think the
differently.
root all the way at the bottom, like that's like the lowest
Point there.
joint I have, and then I made the body like directly on top.
Okay. All right, so well, let's move the root around. No, let's do the body. that
I
root,
think
moving the
everything-
root makes me a little nervous.
Everything is like connected to the body in terms of like paint, like weight.
Everything.
flooding,
Okay.
So
All right, cool. So for the body, I just have that clicked. I just selected on it. I'm gonna right mouse click and do a new, and then do a new control. So it made a new control. And you can see that it's currently connected to the root here, or to our body. We just want to get it out of it put it in with the joints. So we just want to get it out of the joints. So to do that, it's a Shift P. And now you can see it's its own thing, right? It's not falling underneath any of this hierarchy. It's its own controller. Okay, so that's our body control. And this is pretty cool. Like, I think this was one of the suggestions that I made. See how we made that control? It created the control after that. before it would just take the name of the body. So I told him, you should have it say that it's a control, so it's different. But that might be my suggestion. Okay, so we have this body control. If I just click on that, you can see that we have our attributes over here, and the attribute that we want to look at is the shape properties. So if I just tab that open, click on the shape properties, open it up, and then I have a whole bunch of shapes here. And I'm going to actually scale this up so we can see the different shapes. And before I start scaling, I'm going to click on the little lock button, and that way it'll lock all three of these, so it'll scale evenly. And if I just make this thing big, I'm going to pick one of these. I'll do the arrow thick so we can see what that looks like. See, there's our arrow. I'm going to zoom out of here, and I'll just make this window just a tiny bit bigger. There we go. So you can see what our control is going to be here. And we can also change the scale of it. So I'm just kind of clicking on it and making it bigger. And you can place this wherever you want. So we have arrow thickness, we have thick arrow, we have a 4-way thick arrow, we have a box thick if you want to do a box, we have circle thick. What's up? Did you figure it? So for me, you know, we could do a box, we could do arrows. There's like half circles and hexagons and, you know, whatever you want this thing to be. I'm thinking maybe the 2 arrow thick. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate this thing so that it just kind of aligns with my boat. So I will, I'm going to do the rotate X. So that's the red one. I'm going to do that of 90. Okay, so that's gonna rotate that way. I'll do maybe rotate Y of 90. No, not that way. What is going on? I want to go this way with it. There we go. So I'll set this to minus 90 here. There we go. So if you you could manually move this however you want. You can also then start let's see, shape transform. Yeah, so I can scale this up and scale it up. I can just make this kind of big. With controls, you generally want to have them larger than the object that you're going to do. Now, this might seem like it's, really extra thick and juicy here. I can change that to be thin. Maybe that'll be, yeah, that looks a little bit better. Yep.
Mine is running like side to side on the boat.
Side to side, like that way?
Yeah.
You can just take it and do one of those. To rotate, I just hit the E key. And then you can just grab those. Yeah. No, all I did is this is to create the control. So I selected the word body. And then I right mouse clicked, did new, and then new control. And then that created the control. And it was underneath the body. So I selected the control and did Shift P. And that's how that is outside of that control. That's how that's outside there. Does that make sense?
I'm like unfamiliar with Unreal Engine, so I'm just here to watch.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so all I'm doing is just creating the control. It was in the hierarchy of the joints here. And so I was just taking this out. And if this is your first time using Unreal, I'm kind of jumping you in on the deep end. But if you know this, what's that?
This is my first time touching any 3D software.
Oh, all right. Welcome. All right. Well, then you're really putting you out there. Like, I'm just creating avatar over here. No worries. First time. Okay.
The green and make it tiny.
Oh. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, so.
Are you guys in sophomore year?
Okay, so you're on the.
Freshman.
the,
We're all
first
first
house, right?
First
So
year,
you're on the
3D?
skeleton.
3D, 3D, 2D.
Is,
They- Why are you with this?
I invited her.
Oh, okay,
That's-
that's valid.
All right, now.
Also, I'm just really curious to learn more about 3D software and it's
Okay. No, I feel like
good opportunity.
And then
Do you want to do
body.
something and you just don't know it?
Wait, that's
We'll see about that.
That's good though.
But I haven't really explored it, so I don't know yet.
Yeah, because you guys have animation of one and you kind of like do a
Well,
lot.
this is great, yeah, getting in,
But it doesn't
getting in
teach you
now
this.
is.
That's big, yeah.
The only
Better.
thing
Then
I
you'll just be able to
use
build
is
on it.
Sculpt on my iPhone.
Well, that's what awesome.
See
See ya.
No, no, I don't really love to
Say.
Nomad Skull.
Have you used it?
I have not, no.
I bought it. It's worth the $15.
Yeah,
$15. I was looking at the cozy blanket.
I have that too, but it's $80.
I know, that's not like, I just like,
I'm thinking about it.
yeah, I was like, it's just, I don't know, for as little time as you use it.
Yeah, but they have like a voxel in there, which is basically like Dynamesh
Oh, yeah,
/ 3D mesh, so it kind of like, I don't know, it keeps it nice and.
it's like
small.
clay, yeah,
Yeah, it's really nice.
that's cool. And then so I just hit E to rotate this around, like, so I hit E and then you get these little handles here and you can rotate those handles. And, just align them up. And then when I have this selected, I just took the scale. And if you just click and drag, this will make it bigger. But the lock will make sure that all three of those you're scaling up. The nice thing about Unreal is that if you notice they have these little like arrows next to the things. If you ever see that and things are just going horribly bad for you and you're like, I just want to reset, just hit these arrows and it'll just go back to the default of whatever you had or whatever they had put in there for defaults. I do that for like all kinds of stuff. So I just move this around so that it's kind of in that shape. It doesn't have to be perfectly, set up as what you need. What we need is just something to grab to be able to animate. Okay, so that's going to be the body. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create we have the mast here. And so on the mast, we're just going to create a rotate there so we can have it swing while we're animating here. So for that mast, I'll select mast 1. Well, that'll rotate, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
that's the main thing.
That's the main, okay. So we're gonna right mouse click on mast 1, and then I'm gonna do a new, and then a new control. Okay, and then I'm gonna do a shift P because I wanna get it out of the joints. You generally don't want to have joints and you don't want to have controls and joints mixed in with each other, whether that's Maya or Unreal. You always want to have your controls outside of your joints, and then you constrain them. You have the control constraining the joint. So this mast right now, if we look at it, it is just kind of out there on its own. But what we want to do is we want to have, as we move our body control, we want the mast control to move with it. So we need to make it a parent. And the way to make it a parent is just left mouse clicking and dragging onto that. Now it's a child. You can see the little thing. Now it's a child there. And we can make a little masked control here. And the way that we make our mask control is we'll go into our shape property. And we'll just do a circle. Or you can even do like a half circle would be half circle thin maybe. That might work. And then I'm going to lock the scales and then scale this thing up so I can see it. There it is, something like that. And again, I'm holding Alt and left mouse clicking allows me to spin around in here. How's that going so far? Good? Okay. Then I'm going to hit W. And I'm just going to drag this thing up a little bit. And then, well, we could leave it there, or we could like rotate it. So if I hit E, it'll give me my rotate tool, and I can just rotate this down like 90 degrees. So now we have something to grab onto there. I can send you the video.
Okay, yeah. I was
Yeah.
gonna say,
No,
we're
you
gonna
got a
have-
boogie. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. And could you?
Just remind me.
Could you, like share with me the project file as well?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, I can do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
That'd be great.
All right, see ya. Yeah, so they're working on their junior film and using Unreal for animating, or for, well, they're animating in Maya and then exporting out into their animations into Unreal. So, and I'm trying to get them to rig in Unreal and then animate and then say goodbye Maya. Because you can animate with all, you know, pretty colors and, you know, all of that fun stuff. Okay. So now we have our rigs. Oops, I forgot. I switched this around. I'm gonna put that back this way. There we go. Oh, nuggets. Hold on a minute. Before I do that, if you guys have your things switched, I'm just gonna unparent this. So Shift P. I'm gonna switch this back. I think I was just. There we go. Now I'm gonna parent it back up and go back to my mast and parent up. Body. What's going on? Sorry, I think there to there. Are your things going goofy there when that happens? The large arrows I just selected on the body control, and then I just changed this to arrows thin, and then I scaled them up. Yeah, and then so this is weird. This should stay right there. And the way that I'm going to get that to stay right there is I am going to what is it? I'm gonna don't do this yet. Hold on. Reset transforms. No. I want to sorry about this. Offset transform from current. There we go. Offset transform from current. And now this one I should be able to move in there. Okay, so that on that body control, just make sure that you have that you right mouse click and do offset transform from current. There we go. All right, so then this, yep. Do you have a question? No,
Sorry.
do you?
Would you just normally do that with controls
Ye-
general, or is that like?
Well, with this control, yeah, generally you want to like, it's like freezing your transformations, right? So you want to basically set those to 0 so that it stays where you want it to be. So when you set things to 0, it'll just kind of go back and reset it to the original spot. Yeah. So, yep. And then for this one, I'm just going to do reset, let's see, offset transform from current. There we go. Yeah. So it just sets everything to 0. Now, if I accidentally like rotate this, then I could say, okay, well, I just need to reset this and it'll set that as my 0 point. Okay. So far, so good. So we should have 2 things, our body and our mast. Okay, so once we have that, if you ever want to rig something up again, all I did is just do a search on control rig 5, and it's this top documentation, and in there is a quick start tutorial, and they kind of give an overview, and then they just go through all of the steps that I pretty much went through here. This is where we made our new control. This is the new head control. They took it out of the geometry, or out of the controls. They changed their the control shapes. Then now what we want to do is we want to drive the bone with the control, right? So to do that, we have this space out here. And what we're going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to take my body control, and I'm going to left mouse click and drag out into this space. And I'm going to get control. Okay, so what this does is in Unreal, these are called blueprints, like these like node things. This is called a blueprint. And what blueprints do is it's a way of programming in Unreal without having to like type code. You're just dragging boxes and lines and kind of making quick connections with nodes. So what this is doing is it's saying, as we pull this on, it's saying get the transform control. So what it wants to do is it's telling Unreal to say, okay, look at where the control is, get the movement information, and then let me, give me that information. And that's what this is getting. Then what we want to do is we need to get the joint that we're going to be moving. And the joint that we're going to be moving is this body joint. So I'm clicking on that body joint, and I'm going to left mouse click and drag up here. And we're going to get bone. Or I'm sorry, we're going to set bone. Sorry, not get bone. If you have set bone, just select it and delete it and just do it again. So we're going to set bone. So what this is going to do is it's going to get the transformations from this control, and we're going to tell it to transform this bone. And all we're going to do is we're going to take transform and we're going to drag from transform up to this transform. Just select the little dot and drop it on that dot. So far, so good? Yep.
You run through that again?
Yep.
Real fast?
Yep. Let me just kill those. So we're taking the body control, left mouse clicking and dragging out into this space, and we're going to get the control. And we're going to leave it all the stuff the way it is. And then we're going to go and find the body joint. And we're going to left mouse click, and instead of doing get bone, we're going to set the bone. So we're going to use the transform information that we got, and we're going to set it to the joint. Okay. And then all it is just select, you get a little plus arrow over the dot there, and you left mouse click and drag and make those connections. Did you have a question?
No.
Okay. And then if we click on execute, that goes over there. Now, that probably shouldn't happen like that. But it did. Why did it do that? Let's see. That is probably going to be, let me think here. That is going to be maybe the way that I reset transform. There is a way to fix.
Yeah, whatever that was didn't happen to me.
That didn't happen to you?
No,
That did happen to you?
I love computers.
Yeah. Why did you do that? Why did you do that? Well, let's do this. Let's take the down here under the shape transform. And I'm just going to take the rotate and I'm just gonna undo that rotate there, or maybe not that one. Maybe leave that one and then do a rotate Z. No, not Z. Sorry, this, let's try 90. There we go. Rotate Y in 90. So now my boat is back to going there. Might have to reset these transforms. Yeah, I'm just gonna move this back and hit W. So I hit W to get my move tool and just put that right in here. Offset. So for this one, I put it close to this bone here, and then I right mouse clicked and then just did offset shape from closest bone. We'll leave it at that. Is that working? Okay, and then we do the same thing. So I just take the mast, left mouse click, drag it out, and then I get the control. And then I do the bone that's going to go for it, mast 1. And then I set the bone. Then do my transform, left mouse click to transform. And then I can just drag out here. Now this top thing that I'm dragging out. Oh my gosh, got a dead sail here. Let's see. If I grab this thing, I'm just gonna straighten it up and then rotate it out this way. There we go. Now if I set transform from current, there we go. Now it's finally somewhere. So this one in the top actually changes like the position of it. This one in the bottom changes where it is without changing the position. You know, it just changes how the shape looks. So if I wanted this thing like rotated in this Y, I would take, or rotate it around X. I could take this and do 90 or 0, and maybe do this one at 90. There we go. So now it looks like that. All right. Let me help get you guys back on track here. It's been a while since I've done this. Okay. Just left mouse click and drag. There you go. So this one we can just let's see, you can scale it up, just wait, I'm just. There you go, and just lock that. Drag. And that'll make it like bigger. You just drag it all the way out to there. There you go. Yeah, it's pretty big. And then you can just change your rotation like that Y, that is 90. Yep. And then it's also looks like there you go. 90. Okay, yep.
Oh, yeah. You have to grab it and then rotate it and reset it.
Y'all have
I have the phone.
sales.
What?
Y'all have sales.
If you hold alt, and then left mouse click.
It's casting a shadow.
Oh,
If you hold,
yeah, I think
alt-
it has normals on only one side, so when you look at the other way, it's invisible.
I'm sorry, I don't know your name. Alana, hi. If you hold alt. And then left mouse click and drag, and then go to the other side. Yeah,
It's really nothing that needs that you scroll
Well,
like
let's
opposite from how it is on a Mac. I keep like thinking I'm gonna zoom out and then zoom in.
If you want to build a good habit, go into your Mac settings and turn natural scrolling off because it's ridiculous.
And then like, we go other way. Like according to physics, it's just wrong.
There's Google in its settings. Or at least on the Chromebook that I had, called
There you
it
go. And then.
fucking like Australia.
What?
Yeah, was it like opposite, upside down and whatever. It was a funny hee haha. And I was like, haha, I.
I mean, this type of scrolling makes sense to me because you scroll forward and the camera moves forward. You're
I
going the
would
same direction you want.
instinctually.
Similar to the fact that like, it didn't straighten out your.
I guess it makes less sense for 3D space, but when you're scrolling on a web page, it seems like you should always be like, trying to like pushing it up and pulling it down. Like that's how it would be if it was a touch screen.
But you can press space to quickly alternate between the types of transforms, and
Yep.
there's also 3D.
That's the same in mine.
Yeah,
So
this doesn't,
okay.
like scrolling like this and moving the scope down. It's like logically makes sense,
There we go.
but this feels like it should be going down. It's not.
You people are weird. You're fascinating.
So what's wrong helps it rotate to get the sail back to the right way?
Just rotate it like left by 90 degrees.
Like this one?
Yeah. So the green.
Oh.
And then you can use the move from tools.
If you're supposed to.
It's just move down. Oh yeah, it is also backwards. Yeah, and then you go back to rotate it and rotate it 180.
That's right. I don't know how to take notes.
Okay, then we need the minutes.
For 3D software, it's always good to just have a sticky note on your monitor with a bunch of key lines on it. That's how I learned Blender.
Yeah, I will just look up and think I want to. later.
That's also really good because Blender has a tutorial for literally everything.
Yeah. And because we have LinkedIn Learning, there's like tutorials for every single type of software on there.
There, good. Okay, we can bring it down to like here. Take that. So that center is right there. So drag it up.
It's like a very weird type of
Good.
control that I've
Rotate
never
it.
experienced.
Yeah,
It's
it's-
like kind of every.
I'm used to Blender and it's like, yeah, that one. Especially with the WASD type of movement.
Right mouse click there.
So goofy. It's like, oh wow, I did the game engine. I'm moving around like
Well,
Minecraft creative.
I've never played a game either that was like that. Or very many games at all.
Yeah, well, if you get into 3D animation, you're probably gonna work on the games at some point in your life, so it's good to get the WASD thing like internalized.
Yeah, there we go.
And
Okay,
usually
now you need the
this is
control,
like
mouse button. And then drag.
affecting the rotate. Like control and drag
Get the control.
and it was working for me a few minutes ago, but now it's not. When I first started playing Minecraft computer,
And do separate.
Would only play with the arrows. And so I was
As
like
you-
this on my computer.
Middle mouse.
That's so funny.
Middle
I
mouse.
would end up just going like this to the keyboard and being like,
Or maybe right.
That's how games used to be, like a long time ago. I forget which game was the first to have WASD instead of the arrow keys.
And then take this.
But like, this is the classic way to play games.
Ah,
Okay. follow that.
WASD makes more sense.
Um,
I use WASD for my keyboard shortcuts in
and
It'll be in-
rotate. Take that.
That's smart.
Rotate it up. So that it's
like
straight
all
back.
my keyboard shortcuts are here.
Mhm.
And so W is my brush. Q is onion skin, P is
I
eraser,
think this might be.
R is transform. T is delete,
No, I think.
A
I
is
think it's
back
just
frame,
this.
D is forward frame. Like I have like everything right here. So like I never have to move my hand.
I didn't even know you could configure bios. in,
Yeah.
Like Adobe stuff. That's really
You
nice.
can customize all of it.
Thank God, because I hate having B as the selection tool. It's so like, I never remembered that.
What program are you talking about specifically?
I think most Adobe things have the, as that, for like Photoshop and animate. Because I select a lot.
I feel like V and animate. Either that or it's one of my buttons.
So this is the actual like. movement of
Also,
it.
shift
This
B
is
as
kind
the
of
smart
like
brush,
the
even though you should use the smart brush more often.
Of it. If I do a location. bring this up.
Yeah, I don't like the paintbrush is
Yeah,
the
I'll
best
ask her, I'll
tool
Google
in Adobe.
without moving the
In
rest of
my humble opinion, which is right on the design.
My hands are too shaky.
No, not, it doesn't. Let me introduce you to my one true love. You have to understand that I was like. Probably. Like. 15 seconds into making my film. Before I found out that this brush existed. And then I was, in that 15 seconds, it took me like. And then as soon as I found this brush, so I was able to make another 15 seconds. I'm like, oh, let me get this.
And they're in How are you doing?
Like this is the one that I'm like.
Okay, behind, okay. Well, I'll send out the video if you,
Not this
don't
one,
get it.
it's not this way.
How's this going in here? How are you guys?
Good,
I think it's good, although I was getting the pan tool when I did control and then drag with the left mouse button. But now it's not working.
Just do you're trying to move around or?
Like just a pan, like
Right mouse click without anything.
Oh.
Actually, both of them at the same time. Yeah, that'll pan it around.
There's also the one where
You
the
can-
camera is like circling the phone.
Yeah, that's Alt. And left mouse click.
Oh, there you go.
Looks like you're set. How's your vote?
There's
Okay.
It is.
it's just not-
Okay, now comes a moment of truth here.
All right.
Is that you want to connect that up to that, this to that. Nope, it's right there. Beautiful, perfect, great, excellent. Cool. Okay, so the what do we have here? So the way that blueprints work is that there's usually a starting point, and there it's usually like this red kind of thing. And then it took me a while to kind of like wrap my head around it. But the way that this ends up working is that like once you hit play, it starts from this starting point, like a trigger, and then it sends energy to all of these other nodes, right? And so these things don't get executed unless they're a part of this chain, and they'll get executed in the same way. So this will start doing the base bone first, and then this will do the next bone first. It happens so fast that you don't really need to notice it, but just know that you have to have these things kind of connected. These ones don't need to be connected. If it doesn't have this, if it has this little triangle at the top, then it needs to be connected to like that kind of like start energy. If it doesn't have those things, then it just needs to be connected to something else that's going to be in that chain. Okay. Don't have to worry about that just yet, but just so you know why that is set up. Okay. So there is our super simple rig. This is basically it. Now, if for whatever reason, like you went in here and you changed your rig around, it also looks like I might want to reset my rig in here because I think my sail is going off crazy. But if this thing is going like, if I'm testing, I can test my animation here and say like, oh, well, this is going pretty well. If I want to reset it, all I have to do is just hit this compile button and it will reset my rig. So if I wanted to check and see how the boat is moving in here, I can leave it like that and then just click on compile up at the upper left and it will reset my entire joints, which is a lot nicer than what Maya does. But I just noticed that my sail is like kind of way out there. So I'm just going to move this thing down for me. I'll put it back down here, and then I'm going to move my control up. So I'll try. Nope, that's the wrong one. I'll move it up. Nope, that's the wrong one. I'm going to move it up. There we go. So I'm just going to move this control up here. Something like that. And then I'm just going to, for me, I'm just going to set from the current. Nope, not that one. Sorry, it's been a while since I've done this. If you've noticed. But the main thing that you want to do is before you start getting into the animation is you want to make sure that wherever your joints or your controls are, that when you select on them, that this top part where it says the current location up in here, you want all of this to be zeros and then the scales to be 1. Okay, that's the important thing. So when you select on those, if those aren't set at 0, then you'll need to do that right mouse click on it and just kind of figure out which one it does. If it resets it and it sets it to 0, and you could just move the transform or move this control wherever you wanted to do it, then by all means, just move that so that it's easier to kind of click and drag. But if those are set to 0, then we should be good to go. So I'm going to compile this and I'm also going to save it. So those two things, compiling and saving. Okay, so right now we're done with the control rig. Yay. So I'm going to go to my minimum default or my minimal screen here. And so what we need to do is we need to take our control rig and we need to put it out into our scene. So I'm just clicking and dragging, and not sure why I got 2 of them. I don't need 2, I just need 1. There's that one and that one. I don't need this one. There we go. Okay. Taking that one and deleting it. Okay, so you should only have 1 boot. Did you click and drag it out?
Yeah.
It's out there? Good.
Yeah.
And you have your controls that you can then click on and have that selected. Yeah. So now what in previous versions of this, it didn't create this sequencer. Now you might notice that there's this window in here, this sequencer window. This sequencer window, what this does is it allows you to add animation onto your control rig. And before, what you'd have to do is pull your control rig out and then create a sequencer and then attach the control rig to the sequencer. Now in this new version, you drop it on and then it all just kind of works. Okay. So if we want to do some animation in here, under my sailboat rig, if I open that sailboat rig up, we have our body control and our mast control. So I'm going to just click. I'm at frame 0 and I'm just going to click on my first one, the body control. Okay. And then I'm going to I don't know, move this thing out a little bit, like out to there. So I just hit W if you want to move it. And again, moving around in the scene here is I'm using my left mouse button will move me kind of around this way and allow me to push forward or pull back and rotate my camera around. If I wanted to fly around in the scene, I could hold my left mouse button and hit W, and then wherever I'm looking, or actually my right mouse button. If I hold the right mouse button down, now wherever I look, if I hold my right mouse button and W, it will move me forward. So wherever I look, if I look down, I'll go down. If I want to go backwards, that's S. And then if you want to strafe, that's left and right. That's A and D. And I'm just doing that while I'm holding my right mouse button down. Or I could hold both buttons down together and that will allow me to pan around. If I hold my left mouse button, that'll just kind of drag it around. There's the sailboat control rig. I just clicked on my scene. Okay. Did you get it? So then all I did is I then took my, I took in here in my, in the content drawer, I just took the control rig, I left mouse clicked and dragged that onto my scene. And then it created this sequencer. Did that create a sequencer? Okay. And then I went down to the control rig, opened up my, selected on my body control, and I just put the little, click the little button in the middle there. and then it created a keyframe there. Okay, so then what I'm gonna do is I need to go in some time here. So I'm gonna go to frame, I don't know, frame 15. And I'll move it forward. Now, this didn't auto key for me, and I personally like auto key, so I'm gonna turn that on. That's gonna be this button here. Click on that auto key. So now if I change any of the properties on here, so if I make any changes, like I did here, it'll set an animation key. I can also, just like in Maya, hit S, and that will also key everything. So if I want to see the curves, well, these are the control points or the keys. If I want to see the curve animation, I can click on this little curve button right here, and that will bring up the curve editor, just like in Maya. And with the other tabs, I can click the sequence curves and I can just drag that down into this other tab. So I have the sequencer and I have sequencer curves. So however you want to animate, it's the way that I kind of animate with in Unreal is I'll do my animation. And then if I need to go in and edit the curves, I'll just open up the curve editor, the sequence editor, and then, you know, then you can just look at the translate or the rotates or any of that stuff. Does that make sense? Yeah.
How do you get it
To move? Yep. So I'm at frame 0. Okay. And then you have to key it by in the body control over here is this little button. So you click on that and it creates a dot there. Yep. And then I'm going to go forward with it. And I go to frame 15. And then I take my animation or my rig and hit W, and it gets me the arrows, and I can just move them. And now if I go back and forth, now I have my boat moving.
I did not create a keyframe on second.
You either have to hit S or you have to turn on the auto keyframe.
Did that though. I did.
You have one on the cursor? And you have it selected. So you have the body control. Yeah, and that's like, there you go. Now hit, move it a little bit. There you go, and hit S. Yeah, there you go. Now it's,
Okay.
now you should be able to drag back and forth. There you go. Now I have that animate. Okay, and then, you know, if you wanted to have that, you know, say like turn in there, we'll go to like frame 45. And then we'll have this move forward. And we'll have it move over, and then we'll also give it a little bit of rotation. And I'm going to hit S on there. So W, E, and R will give you, you really want to stay with W and E because you don't want to scale it. But W and E will give you your move and rotate. And so now I should have, now it's kind of going off that way, but I could, I should probably turn this a little bit sooner. So I'll turn that boat a little bit sooner. There we go. And again, if I wanted to take a look at what my curves are doing for my rotate, my roll, my pitch, and my yaw.
How did you get the sequence editor to be as the curve editor?
Yep, that's just this, that's this button right there. And when you open it, it'll open as a window, a separate window. And I just took the tab and just dragged it down into this so that it's in there. So, and then I can take my curve, I take my curve and then select this and select that, and then. Yeah, there we go. And then I can, take those curves. And I can left mouse click and drag these up and down, and that's going to be like my pitch in there. If I go to that's going to be the roll. My pitch is going to be that rotation in there. So, oops. So if I select just one of those keys, and then I can click on the Bezier handle, then that will allow me to rotate that. Okay, so if I'm in my curve editor, I can select on the key that I want to change. So I just clicked on it, left click, and then I can left click and drag the curve in there, and that will change that around. Pretty cool, right? And now if we got that going, what we could do is we can animate our mast now. So if you have a little bend in there, we could go back to our sequencer and go to go take our timeline back to 0. So I'm going to hit create a key in here, or I can hit S. When you have it selected, that's when it's going to create the key. So I'm selecting on that master control, or the mast control, and hit S, and that keys everything. But I want to have that out a little bit because our sails are going to be kind of out that way. Or we'll have it maybe 45 degrees. There we go. We'll do something like that. And then as it's going forward, we'll keep the same key here. So I'm going to hit S again. And then around in here, it's going to start to turn. So we're going to want to turn our mast into that. So I'm just taking the mast and making that kind of keep the same. That same kind of 45-degree angle, because the wind's going to be, we're going to want the wind to catch our sail there. How's that working out for you guys? Good. Okay, and then I could come in here and I can also look at the like the roll, and I could select both of these, hold my shift and middle mouse click and drag those up and down, and that will give me a little bit of a roll in here. And I'm middle mouse clicking, or I'm right mouse clicking to move around here, and then using my mouse wheel to zoom in and out. So if you know how to animate in Maya, it's very Maya-esque in that regard. So I can take that and move it around. Now, the cool thing with this is that if you go onto, if you're in your curves, if you want a key here, say we want this boat to kind of rock back and forth, like kind of wavy. If I middle mouse click on the curve, it will give me a key that I can then animate. So if I have it kind of rocking back and forth here, so it starts out there, it's rocking, and then it starts to head back. And then I could middle mouse click on the curve again, and then make it kind of sail off. So then all I'm doing is just playing with the rocking back and forth. I can middle mouse click on the curve and then get some more keys in there. And I can move those around. Yeah.
I've been some problems.
Okay.
It's not like, if I go here and then I do this.
It doesn't update.
Yeah.
Try your put in now change your. Oh, you aren't moving because you're just moving the geometry. You aren't moving the rig. See this. No, you're so there, that. So, grabbing on the whole thing. Doesn't have any keys on it. This, your control rig is, so your this down. Right here. Let's raise it up. There you go. So now you can see grab W animate that. So see that has animation. So let's do this. Let's take that.
So I have to
Let's
like.
take this. And this. Yeah, that's your control. That's what's controlling your boat.
Got it. Okay.
All right, so if we go here, now if we hit S, because this is selected, we hit S, that gives us a key. And then also here, if you are, right now, see how this is like off? That's because it's to the roll. But if you click on that, it'll put it to the on there.
Okay.
Okay, so then you can go, you know, your 30 frames. Go that way. And now,
Yay.
now it's moving.
Well, let's move
There you
it.
go. And then you can hit S, will key everything. Those will put keys on everything.
All right,
No,
sweet. Okay.
other guns.
My camera.
Yep, so the camera is, you can right mouse click. And then you can, if you've ever played any first person shooters, you hold the right mouse button down. Then you can move around here using the, Q and E moves you up and down. And then W will move you forward. And A and D will move you left and right.
Okay.
The other way that you can also do it is to, is if you hold your left mouse button, click and drag forward and backwards. No, yeah, drag. That will do it. Or you can hold your right mouse button. And then wherever you look, if you press W, yeah, if you hold that down, and now if you turn around, like just, yeah, turn around and then hit W, it will, you got some, nice God rating there. Well, that's it, you know, that's one of the other advantages of doing it in Unreal is that the thing can look pretty like right out of the box. You know? And if you animated, say, like a film, like if you were animating your film, it would be, you know, like what could take a month, it take 20 minutes in Unreal. Yeah, well, it's real time, so it's there you go, yes, it is Unreal.
Thank you.
And finally figured it out.
Figured it out. And now you know why they call it unheard.
So. When, I mean,
I'll help you in a second.
No.
from the top and it like is going, and then when I start to turn, like the controller doesn't turn with it. Like if I rotate it. Like rotate it
Oh,
on an
okay.
angle.
Yeah, here, let me show you. I was just gonna show that to you, everybody here. So one of the things, right now, if I look at the control for the boat, see how it goes off here, whoops. See how, this control, if I wanted to try and get this thing to pitch this way, right now, the control for this, or the ability that I have is not set up. This is set for the world. That is going to be this button here. So right now the rotations are set to the world rotations. If I click on this, it'll be set to the object rotation. It'll set it to the object that you're selected on. That's this button right there. So it's either world rotation or object rotation. Okay. Oh yeah, did you get fixed? Did you get set up?
Yeah, I pressed R. and so it felt- Now I'm messing around. I'm killing the boat.
Yeah,
There's a tsunami.
it's kind of tsunami like. You can select, individual curves. If you go down there, you can do the rotates, you can look at each one individually. If you hit A, it'll show all of it. And it should show you all the curves. There you go. And I can see what's really happening there. And that's doing a little something there. Yeah, I think we probably are looking for is that in here, we go to here, and then like here. Ditch, and then move this up and down, probably looking for just that to go.
Yeah.
And so what you could do is you could take out, this. And then also take out this. Take out these, right? And then go into this one. And this is going to adjust your rotation. So that as that's going there. You take this and say, all right, on that. Or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah. It is. It's all that. So what Unreal does is it brings everything in together. So like, it doesn't have the freaking capabilities of adding joints to the skin, not yet. They just added the control rig, so that'll be coming, and then pretty soon you will go from like the ZBrush and pull the files in from ZBrush and then create your joints there. And then skin them. But right now you need something either Blender or Maya to have joints. So in Unreal, if you want to move kind of anything, like an arm or something, you need to have that skin. So you need to have a joint in there and then the skin attached to that joint for it to be able to move like that. You can just bring in objects. Like if we just brought in this boat, we could just straight up, put some animation keys on it and move it around. Like we didn't have to do this control rig, but generally you want to control things using a rig of some type, not just like grafted joints. And that's what they had before, was the just joints that you would animate. It was the pain in the butt. But now you can set up a control and then animate that. So, but you, or like Maya, depending on what you're doing with it, you could bring an animation in a couple different ways. One, you could create the rig in Maya, so like you had like a T-pose character. And you bring that rig in. And then set up the rig like we did here, and then animate it here. You could also animate your character in Unreal, in Maya. Then you could export out your character, still the T-pose. And then you can also separately export out an animation file as an FBX. And you pull that in and then apply it to the rig that is T-face or T-pose. And then you can play it in Unreal. Then you could also export out just the geometry as an Olympic cache. So you don't have any joints in there, it's just the geometry moving around. And then you can pull that also into Unreal. But then with the geometry, you don't have any way of kind of manipulating anything if it goes wrong. It's like you just have the geometry. So 3 different ways to pull it in. But it can make animating, or it can make, doing films a lot faster. So in fact, if you guys have your, if you guys will make a little movie here of the boat. So to make a little movie of this boat, we need to have a camera. So in the sequencer, I'm just gonna close where it says sailboat rig, control rig. And I'm going to right mouse click. Maybe I'm going to right mouse click. Oh, I want to be in the sequencer. You want to make sure you're in the sequencer. And in the sequencer, I'm just going to click on this little camera button. Create a new camera. Loop. And then what that does is it puts us in the pilot active Cine camera view here. So we can now move this camera around. And we can kind of see what our animation is going to look like from our camera view. You see that? You guys got a camera that you're looking at?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if we wanted to put some animation on this, say we wanted to follow this boat going out there, I can, where's my camera here? I need to add my camera in here. Track. Where is my camera? Click on my outliner. There's my Cine camera. Okay, so my Cine camera actor, I just need to drag down into my sequencer. Or I should be able to drag in my sequencer. Maybe I can't. What am I doing wrong? Something is. Let me do a track actor. Oh, okay. Under track, we need actor to sequencer, and then I'm just going to do my Cine camera actor. Click on that. Huh, still not doing it. What are you doing? We should be able to just add our camera in here. And why are you not adding it in here? I do not know. Sailboat rig, take 1. It's in there. I'm just gonna eject myself out of this. It's like a little eject button. So if I wanted to go back into it, I could go under my cinematic viewport. That'll show my camera. I don't know, maybe this is. Oh, there's my Cine camera actor. So if you want to get out of that, there's a little eject button that you can stop and it'll eject you out, and then it will put you into your perspective view. And in the default viewport, if I have this camera selected, it should show up my thing here. Now, did it? Oh no.
I was saving.
Oh, you were?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's good. That's also probably a good time for us to do a file save. So you can do a save all. Or you can do a shift, control shift S will save everything. Yeah,
X, Y, and Z stack is here.
just hit W. Just hit W, select it and hit W. That should bring it. Like if you click on the boat, it should be W, E, and R. Yep. That's what I was saying is that right now you're probably in the Cine camera actor point of view. And so all I did is just click on this. I clicked on this little eject button. If I click on that, it will bring me out. And then I just zoomed back. I just scrolled back. It's just puts you in that view port. And then I can select it again. Yep.
Can you like keyframe your camera?
Well, that's what I'm trying to do. And so what I'm used to it doing is I'm used to being able to just click and drag it down in here and then having it be a part of this view. But for some reason, it is not showing me my camera. Like it's not showing. It like what I'm used to having is this is the camera down here. So I'm going to try and add Cine camera actor. And it's there. Didn't add it anywhere else. Oh, okay. So close your sequencer. Okay, so take that sequencer, just close it. Is it closed? Okay, then go find your like sail rig, control rig, take one. See, it says level sequence. Double click on that. Or just click on it once and then scroll down in the attributes. And then we're going to look for the sequence asset. Just open the level sequence. There it is. Now my camera's in there. I don't know why it didn't show up before, but now I have my camera. Do you guys see that? Yeah, so now if I have my camera here. And sending close. Nice. I don't know, something about that. Something about that.
Crashed at the same time.
Did it? Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny.
Is it frozen? You might want to do a Control Alt Delete and kill it. I'm just going to open up the project again. Oh, it might.
This is why I spam the save key every time I do something.
Unreal does a pretty good job of doing that.
It doesn't look like it is.
Did it get
trapped
See if you can
underneath.
find it in your content drawer and then press
Cause
F to focus on
mine
it.
got underneath the landscape for some reason when I imported the
Maybe try
training
X1.
thing.
So I just opened up the Unreal to get back in there. I opened up the Unreal
You can search for it as well.
shortcut and then just did a open. Did you find it? Minimize that. And that. Lighting. Did it crash?
It did, but I was saving, but
Okay,
maybe I
I'll check
wasn't
it out.
saving right.
No, it's right here. So, just click and drag that onto that. And then open level sequence. There you go. Okay, so now we just need the cell, we just need to add the sailboat. So go back to, your content. And then we need the control, right click and drag that out here. There you go. Okay, now. Go back up here. Let's click here. I'll click on the track.
That was actually fun.
Assign actor. And then sailboat rig. Yep, that one. There you go, go to the down, right down. There we go. Now it should be somewhere in there. Go to your outline area. Select your sailboat rig. Here, down. And hit F. Deploy. Or, yeah.
That's big.
No, it's deploy. Oh, no, it's not. I'm sorry.
That
Looks like it's there.
was
Yeah. Same with them. Hold the right mouse click. Okay, right mouse button and then W.
big list.
Yeah, no, it's gone. You're fine. Yeah, you can speed it up here. Right. Oh, there we go. All right, let's scroll, just to make sure. No, not that one. So click here. There you go. All right, get back. Okay. So, so it looks like this is finally back open for me. We're gonna see what I lost here. Open up my level sequence. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm not too keen on this camera. For some reason, this feels like it's gonna create more problems. So I'm just gonna delete that camera and I'm gonna create a new one. I'm gonna do a up here under cinematic and then do cinematic camera actor. And I'm also gonna delete this down in here. And now I'll take my cinematic camera actor and drop it down into here. All right. Do you guys see how I did that? So I just, what I did is I had in my cinematic actor here, I took and I just deleted the camera that was there. So for some reason that's not working quite right. So I just selected it, hit delete. Hit delete. Go away, Hit delete. I said I hit delete. There we go. So I just deleted that. Kill this one too. Get all the cameras. If you see any cameras in there, just kill them. Then what I did is I created a new camera by going up into here. So quickly add to project, and I went down to cinematic and then camera actor. And then there's my new camera. Yeah. And now if I want to see where, well, I want to put that in my timeline, in my sequencer. So I just click on cinematic camera actor, and I need to tell it that I want to do animation on this. So I click and drag it down into the into my sequencer. Now it puts me in the view of the camera, and I can put this over here like that. So say I'm doing something like this. Let's see, let's go back to 0 there. All right, so my camera is here. Now I should be able to add keys to this. So I'm looking at the transform, and I'm just gonna set a key at 0 here on my transform. And as that goes, I'm gonna keep my camera here until about this point. So I'll hit S there. And then it's gonna start to move out. So I'll just right mouse click and rotate out this way. And now you should see, I should have a curve. I should have my camera moving. Now, another thing too, is if you don't want to see any of this junk in here, you can press G. And it will just kind of like hide all that other extra stuff. So now I can see what that's going to be doing. How you guys doing with that? So far, so good?
Once you exit the cinematic camera.
Yep.
Whatever, how do you?
The sequencer?
go back into it?
Yeah, so in your viewport, you should have a wait, you want to go back into looking through your camera?
Yes.
If you click on perspective, click on cine camera actor. That will have you look through the camera.
Okay. I have 2 for some reason.
You could delete one of them.
Okay.
Just pick one, kill it. You have to say die when you're doing it though. Die, camera, die. Okay, so is everybody able to get some animation on your camera?
I have not got to the camera, because I've been having a lot of trouble
Oh,
getting to getting to the point where I can like have this camera work the way it was just working 5 minutes.
If you look at mouse click on it, and then look around. So not move your, just right mouse click and drag around. Then you can see, and now you can hold the right mouse button and press W.
Then when I come up to it,
Well, right now you aren't like in a camera, just so you're aware. This is just your perspective. So then if you, yeah.
also I'm not sure it was
So-
white a few minutes ago and now it's brown.
I think it's There might just be processing and issues or.
It does look more realistic in brown.
Um. Yeah, so like the geometry in here, like the materials, like there are no materials they have. We don't have any materials. That's all on. Oh, we'll just leave it like that. We're not gonna get into materials right now. But it, so now you can move like both fingers here. We'll move you around. And then right mouse will allow you to go like that. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll do like my right mouse click and then left. And then right and left and right and left to kind of get around where I want to go. Or you can use the D and S. You can also slow down the speed if it goes too fast. You can move this
Okay.
down. And then when you're moving around here, you could drop that down. So you don't like fly out of there. Yeah.
Okay.
Now you don't have a camera. So the way you can create a camera here is by doing cinematic and then camera actor. And if you want to look at that one, then you can go to cinematic camera actor. Now we're looking through the camera. You can even see we have some like, we have some blur in there, right? Some focal shift in there. And then you can pick a camera position that you want. That's dramatic.
Like we're getting hit by the boat.
There you go. So you can, pick your camera angle, whatever one you want, and then when you're done being in the camera, if you want to set the keys for it, we have to then take the camera actor and drop it down into here. Actually, what was this? Might have to take here, let's take one. Let's see what's here. There we go. And that's where your cinematic, that's where the camera is, and also the control rate. So then in here under transform, we can say, okay, this is going to be where it's going to start. And then we can move this. We can say, okay, it's going to still be here. And then when we get to here, now we can right mouse, just right mouse clicking, and that's going to be like a nodal rotation. And keep it going. Now as we follow it around,
Cool.
there it goes.
Yeah, do you know how to get the mountains to go away so it looks more like an ocean?
Absolutely. Just go landscape.
I think I was using the backspace. That's.
Let's see, got it. And there you go.
Now it looks like it's flying.
Yeah, well, you can put you could put like a plane in there. If you want. Like a basic shape.
Mhm.
And you can make that plane be like scale of like the bajillion. Like 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Where about the shadow is gone, which be there. Oh, shit, that was too much. think it has to do with, shadow bias. It might be that it's just like really small. But if we we just call it waves, and then on our plane here, we can take the plane. And in here. We double click on this. We just take that color. Make it be. There you go. Maybe. Okay, I think it's because the camera was, the camera was like underneath the. Get out of that. Yeah, we're cameras being. So anyways, I can select that camera. Select the camera and I'm not sure why it's still doing that, but there we go. Might be the resolution of it or something. I'll have to figure out what that processing is. Anyways, there you go for right now.
Hey.
Are you good? Do you have your camera going?
Hmm?
Do you have your camera started?
Just been animating it outside of it. So.
Yeah, that's fine. You can hit E, we'll give you a rotate.
Yeah.
And you can also turn off snapping. That's this. Yeah.
It's so cool.
Oh, this is just the start of cool. This can do so much awesome stuff. Okay, so let's get some frames out of this thing. So to get some frames out of here, we have this little render this movie to a video. That little like clapboard. If I click on that, it'll open up this render movie window. And just for simplicity, we'll render it out as an AVI file. And we don't have any video, but we can also export out like PNG sequence if we want to bring it into After Effects or something like that. It's just this little little clapboard right there. Click on that. And then what I can do is output format, frame rate. We can do whatever kind of frame rate we're going to do. If we want to do custom 24 frames per second, depending on what you're working in, what it's going to, you can set your resolution. So we can do we can make it really huge because it's real time. So we can do like a 30 3840 and then advanced. Let's see, burn in, enable compression. Yeah, output directory. We can save this to well, right now this is going to go to my trash. Right now it's in content, but if I go to my test trash and go to saved, usually there's movies in saved. We'll put it in saved. We'll create a new folder in saved and do movies. Okay, so I just went back to to my test trash. You are in content. This is where all this stuff currently is. And I back it up and I went into save this into movies, and I'm going to select this folder. Select that folder. Use compression. Sure. We'll just crank the quality all the way up. File format. Yeah, we'll just use the world name. Sequence, cinematic, all that stuff. All that looks good. And then we're just going to do capture movie. And it's going to ask us, what is it going to ask us? Save content. Do we want to save this stuff before? Yes, please. Save all of it. Save all the things. And now what it should be doing is it should be creating our movie. And then here is our movie preview. Why that is not going. Oh. This is our movie preview. It says exit the preview. The weird thing is that it didn't seem like it took my well, let's see what the movie is. We'll go to my trash, we'll go to saved, go to movies, and then movie here. And I don't know where that is. Where are you going with that? Oh, you guys didn't see. There, this is my movie. It like totally disregarded my camera. It's like, see ya. But it's weird because I'm using the sequencer. Game mode override. I'm looking to see if there's a thing where I need to tell it what camera I'm using. Video settings. Sequence, hide frames, movie extension, cinematic mode. Let me just try a plugin here that I'm just going to go into settings and do plugins, and I'm just going to look for let's see. Movie render queue. I'll click on that. It's going to say it needs to be restarted. I'll just say okay. So that like movie exporter is kind of, it's a legacy thing. I don't know why the default or the new one isn't added as the default. So we'll open this back up. And like I said, I just did a went into my plugins. I went into settings, went down to plugins, opened up my plugins, and then typed in movie. And then I was looking for the render queue. So now if I go into my sailboat here, opening my level sequence. Yep.
I keep on getting a message that says read only output directory and then the name of the place where I'm trying to save the file.
Where is it? Where are you saving it to?
Like documents or
Try desktop. Desktop isn't working?
Yeah.
So it started flashing like all the time now. I'm not really sure what's up with this.
That flashing is so odd. Well, you can go into your lighting here. Just turn on the.
You can always just take out the flames. I think that was part of the problem.
Yeah, I was just saying that like in the lighting, the directional lighting, you just type shadow here. Then again, cast shadows. There you go.
It's still flashing.
Yeah, it's still flickering. Yeah, or you can kill. Oh, do you know what it is? I bet you. I think it's this, probably the scale of this thing. It's probably just. Let's try. Reset this and then set it to like 500. Yeah. And directional and then shadow. There it is. It was just way too big. I couldn't calculate it.
Mine renders as an image sequence to video. How can I change that? Or just
Image.
compile it as a video?
Well, this is what I was saying is that this is like legacy. Yeah, it comes out as an image sequence.
Yeah.
Did you go into here and do this? Okay, so like right now, this job. Wait, open this. Save config, there it is. Okay, so in the unsaved config, then you can do yeah, I think in this one, it doesn't, it only has them as image sequences.
Mhm.
So what you can do is you could just pull that into After Effects.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, like AVIs are not that great, right? You'd want to do it in like an MP4 or something anyways.
Yeah.
So just open up After Effects. Okay. So for you, let's see, let's close this. And go into settings and then two buttons. And then it says type in movie. And then go to render. Yep, there you go. And then just start that. And then save it. And it will automatically pop back up. There we go. And then we can open up the sequencer. One of these is the sequencer. Yeah, I'm saying, so open up the content drawer. And then take this and drag it out there. And then. just open it. Open the sequence. Oh, there, okay, go down. Go down. Yes. You have to actually bring the cell over down. Yeah. There you go. One more time, sorry. Attach. Sign after, that's it, so see where it's right mouse click on assign after. And then I'm assigning the control rate. Yeah, there we go. So now that should be. There it is. So I just hit like selected it in the outliner. That will bring it there. So I'm gonna close the sequence right here. And I'm gonna open up this, I'm gonna select the take. An open level sequence, and that should have our cameras. I don't know why this landscape lighting. We might have added selected and then just made some animation keys on it. Yeah, that's fine. And then you have two cameras.
Yeah.
Probably that's the one you want.
Yeah.
So we'll just delete that one too. That's nice. And then there we go. And away it goes. Okay, so now with this new render movie view, this is the new thing that I was kind of looking for. If you select on this as unsaved config, right now this shows you the like the exports here. Did you get your did you get the plugin added? So we have. Great, there you go. Okay, cool. So now we're just gonna export it out, but so do a control shift S, that's gonna save everything, control shift S, that like saves all the things that are open.
Okay.
Now we're gonna go to the settings. Then we're gonna go down to plugins. And then do a search for movie. We're gonna do the movie render field. This should be like on by default, I don't know what it is, but I'm gonna restart. Should pop back up. Yeah. Good. Yeah, I'm glad you guys are having a good time with it. A lot of stuff this thing can do, and like there's with Unreal, they have a thing called the mega scans that they basically bought. It's all this photogrammetry stuff, so you can like put real trees, cars, and all kinds of stuff. Yep. Yeah, so close that. Yep. And then we'll just close this. We don't need that open. Close that. We don't need that open. Close that. We don't need that open. And then that right, we don't need it. Okay. Then in here, we have yeah, for some reason it's saving them. So let's go to
Wait,
and then take
no, I'm gonna
this.
be at
drag it.
Indigo. Oh, yeah, Indigo looks so much cooler. And it's next water.
Cheers.
It's the record problems here.
right? Phase one,
It just got right now.
the render isn't.
So then we're just gonna open the level sequence. And when we open that, that should be this. We have a lot of cameras in there. So I'm just gonna see what the most people sense. That one. you know. Sorry, also, no. No, still don't work, but we'll make it work. So I'm going into perspective. I'm gonna look through the camera. And then I'm just gonna hit that. Let's see, select on my sailboat rig. That. Plug in and let's. Oh, okay. And then- Yeah. Yes. Yes. And then,
Next to the greens. No. The other one. No, no. Over, the one that has the angle. Oh, that one, okay, yeah. You can make them smaller or you can just turn it off.
okay, so I'm just gonna take that and go over it. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, okay, so this.
I don't know enough about sale, which way the sale would be going in this situation. Because it like went around, like I had to go around the curves and like go straight.
So
It would change if the sale should stay in the same direction.
the wind is always blowing in the same direction.
Yeah.
So if you're turning to the left, the sail would push out to the right and it would keep,
Yeah.
it would stay parallel or not
That's like
parallel,
your,
perpendicular to the wind.
it's like,
Yeah.
So,
If you went around. This is the boat, this is the sail, it's starting out like this, and you made a turn, that it would still go like this.
should be.
And you can also animate it bouncing back as the rope gets too taut and like pulls it in.
That should be the one sequence.
I don't know these formats. Strange. Didn't have the first time. Like.
No, sometimes. I think it should be.
Oh, yeah, it's not.
What else do you want? There's no H216 or whatever that is.
MP3.
No. Or maybe that.
Except that's set up,
that's
you know,
the-
Oh, wait, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I think for, shit.
Mhm.
Okay, so. You can play around with it later. But now that it has that, now what we can do is, close this. Just take one. There we go. Okay, so now we have some keys. We
I
can
may
also
have to export After
create
Effects
a-
from
But not
the
big
time.
time because this is not that.
Click here.
don't know any of these other things.
And
then we can move that.
yeah,
against that one.
Yeah, a lot of those are audio.
So you either do it from,
Yeah.
you know, from the view, like here. You know what I mean?
There we go. Yeah, it's really blurry. Whatever. Yeah, we're in the scene. Yeah, I got
And drag it down here, and it'll show up here.
Yeah, as you can see, it picks up the wind and it bounces around and then it settles down as it gets.
I just dragged it in
more
more.
in opposite direction.
It's like all of this stuff is here, but if you want to animate it, then you have to drag it.
I'm just having in mind.
And I'll key it
3D movement.
and then
It's yours. Let me see it.
because
I wanna see it.
Let's see what the 2D animator did in 3D.
This is my first time.
I'm fascinated by this.
This be nice.
I'm going to murder you.
I will cry.
Great, so now that we have that, now we can click on. Yeah, the camera has keys on it, yep, exactly, and you can change those keys by just opening it and then going into the prompts. Changing, you know, if you want to do it later. Then you click on this, this gives us a render movie queue, and you go to render, not render, sorry. Where it says unsafe as config.
That is annoying.
And right now it's gonna do it as a JPEG sequence.
It's so damn bad.
PNG.
I don't care.
And then the deferred rendering,
toggle it to
color,
Or
or if you wanna do any extra things, you can tell it where you want it to go. So like output directory, yeah,
very silly.
output directory, like desktop.
Yeah, I did. Then I made the last.
Save, and then right.
I was just like.
Folder here.
What happens? Did you check out the graph editor?
And then select that folder. And then, okay, so it's just gonna do that. Output resolution. You can leave it there, and change it to whatever you want. And
Sorry,
then
we're
24 frames a
animating
second.
intersect math.
Yeah.
So. So the view render. Okay, so it's just like what?
It gives the specific. Was animation and human design of the game engine. So it's less buttons in the game.
Oh wait, yes, this one.
Um,
I have that in my notes. I spelled it.
Real NGI.
Let me see.
And it's my favorite part of it.
You can do that.
And then all these things you can add different settings in there, like camera or cameras and a whole bunch of other stuff, but that's pretty much. This is gonna go to movie, then select, and then we'll get so. There goes. Okay. and I'm gonna open up that folder. Go to desktop. And the movie sequence, we can open up after that's where they're at. You know how to do that? Okay. Just click on this and do after effects. I teach 3D animation 1 and 2, advanced modeling. Let's see. Yeah. Let's do it there. RIT. Yeah, so those are the ones like currently teach. I think for animators. Animation 1 and 2. Yeah. Teaching 1 now. Yeah, we don't get you guys until second year. Yeah. So we're gonna close this. That's always. Give it a try. No, it's not. After Effects is fine. Pretty crashy. Okay, so then what we want to do is go right here, import. Let's I just select one and then go to import. And now, if I want the sequence down here, do this thing. Sequence down here. Now we should be able to see that. I guess just did one image. Yeah, no, it's just have to make sure PNG sequence. Yeah. So there's our comp.
It's very automatic.
Now what we need to do is we need to do a file.
I'm trying to
And we-
visualize what.
best way to
the
do it out of
in
After
my head,
Effects
just thinking
is to
about
do
one.
like.
I could tell.
And to so many references. Ian Carter does a better job because he can. explain all this stuff.
6 months since I've seen it though.
I have been.
It's been over 6 months. They're really, Disney more than Moana. But it's very sensitive.
I've been sailing on multiple occasions.
That's so cool.
It's really
I've never been.
It's terrifying. Because I was in like a personal sailboat. I was big enough for 2 people.
So then it's.
So like when the wind picked up, the boat went like,
A second.
but it was very fun.
I like
So then.
in a rowboat.
You can
And
just
I
tell it where you
like,
to save it.
so peaceful. and
Yeah.
It's fun and I just go
So
wherever
just
I
tell
want.
I went fishing over the summer.
Save. Movies. All that's your. Save. Now we just hit play.
It's fun. We go to.
I should do the things.
I love tubing.
Fishing.
Tubing is very silly.
All right. How do I?
Yeah, and then you can just go into your folder. And probably towards the end, there is your movie file. There it is. Ta-da. Okay, so now when you guys, well, actually, just for the video. For the people at home here, so now that I redid this, I'm just gonna open up my movie render sequencer. So I want to render out a movie, an image sequence. And the way that I'm gonna do that is I'm just gonna click on this settings and I'm gonna go to unsaved config. And it opens up with JPEGs. We don't need a JPEG. I could just delete that. And I can do a setting and do a PNG, offers better quality. You never really should render your stuff out as JPEGs. You guys know that, right? Do you know that? Yeah, don't render out as JPEGs, because I mean, if you look at some JPEGs, like some of the compression quality artifacts that you get out of it are just gnarly. So you want to do like at least a PNG sequence. EXRs are better, but they're bigger. Okay, so then you can go into your output and you can like set your resolution, your frame, and all that other stuff. Most important thing right now is just telling it where you want it to go. And I want this to go to my desktop. I want it to go to my trash, my logs, my movies. I'm just going to save it there. And I'm going to hit accept and then render. And then it will start to render this. I'm not entirely sure why this camera is going all over the place, but
Yeah.
But it works on everybody else's. So then if I wanted to look at my movie, my render sequence, I can take my render sequence and open up After Effects. And open up After Effects. After Effects, it'll take a minute here.
Yeah, close that again.
While that's going, I'm gonna try and
Click on the triple dot. And then
send a camera actor to.
Need to get the plugins.
um,
Oh yeah, the plugin. You have to do settings and then plugins, and then just type in movie. And then you want this movie render setting, render queue. Yep.
It's not going through my camera's perspective. It's just like,
Yours isn't either. That's weird. Neither is mine.
okay.
But hers was. Hers was just doing it too. What's up? Did you get yours?
No,
What?
just, we're all in the same boat.
That's awesome. That's awesome. We are all in the same boat. Hilarious. True. Let's see here.
Plugins thing.
Yep.
It, says that it'll have to restart.
Yeah, just make sure to save everything, do a file, and then like save all. I'm trying to figure out why it is going through not my camera actor. Because my camera has keys on everything.
Really. Like,
As this is, it puts it into like the dedicated Unreal project folder, so like in like here,
oh, so I just need to like name it and say save.
yeah.
Why is that not going? That's so weird. Okay, going back to my After Effects here. I want to just close this out and then close this. And then to get it into my project here, I go to import file, go to my let's see, not my Unreal projects, but my desktop, my trash, the movies, and then I'm just going to select the first image there, and it says image sequence, and I'm going to do create composition. And if I create the composition, it's going to automatically have that in there. Why my camera is not going in there, I don't know. Driving me nuts, but we'll go with this for right now. I know that it does work, but I must be missing something. And then for my composition, I just do add to media encoder render queue. So that's composition, add to Adobe Media Encoder render queue, and then it will open up Media Encoder. It's doing it on my other window. Why is that not? That's still going to. I'm just looking at my preview here. Okay, so back to After Effects, or actually Media Encoder. So once Media Encoder, it should already propagate your stuff. You just take it and select where you want it to go to, and I just want it to go to my desktop, my trash folder, saved, movies, and I'll call this my boat movie. Bad cam. There we go. I'm gonna do save. And now all I have to do is hit the little play button, and then it should create my sequence with my bad camera. There it goes. Go, 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 go. Okay, and then there is my new MP4. Ta-da! And then that's it. There you go. Now you have your movie. Another thing that I'll just kind of quickly point out here is that if you hold like if you're in your window setting here, if you go to control, hit control and L, or not control, let's see. Make sure I'm in my perspective default port view. Yeah, I just have to click so that this is my active view. What? And then control and L will give me my my lighting. It'll change the lighting on here, but I already deleted my light, my poor little light.
Oh, wait, this happened. Here, you gotta go
The
to
same
the
thing that happened in class.
control space. Click on the content door, then take your Rigg take one, that, drag and drop that on over. Yeah.
And I was trying to see if I put a new camera in, if it's going to listen to me now. Nope, still putting it in the basement. Hmm. Well, I'm not entirely sure why this camera is not being picked up, but it's generally how you do it. So close. Wonder if I have to set something in this. Oh, maybe convert to spawnable. Maybe that's my problem. I wonder if that's it. If I have to convert my camera to spawnable. Let's try this. Capture movie. Save selected. Nope, still in the basement. Hmm. That is so odd. Well, anyways, that's what I have for you guys today. So if you guys have any questions, if you shoot, or I'll send out a link through Mary of this class. I'll try and trim it up so we don't have all the kind of like in between dead space there. And we'll see how that goes. If you guys have any questions, just let me know.
Question, the
Sure.
animation, is not here anymore, the keys are here, but when I scroll through it, it's not.
Yeah, so you have to associate your book to it. So if the keys are there. What grade is it? Written on school? And do. So, go to Outline. And then do a, on your cell, yep, there, and then in here, hit that. Take that, yeah, here, take the, put the cell rig down. No, go down cell rig. I'm sure why it's so small, but just change the your speed, just crank it up, there you go, and then hold the right mouse button down, and then hit W, hold W. There you go. Now you can use 2 fingers, your left and right together, and then brings it up, and then you can right mouse click and back up. Like right mouse click, right, and that's left. Yeah, you can look around and see where you're. There you go. So now you can just slow it down. Right mouse button and W. Maybe like 4. You should be able to scroll.
Cool. Have to do the plane again. And then, I remember where it was.
It's up right there.
And there's an editor.
Details. 500. Oh boy, I'm going gas now.
Okay. Also, I'm not sure like where the camera is, it's not here anymore.
Yeah.
Oh,
Ah.
Also, it would be nice to get rid of the mountain again, although it does kind of look like a lake.
Yeah, you can select on those mountains and kill them.
Right.
Didn't we delete those?
We did, but then they came back.
Or that's good. I didn't delete.
Grayed out.
Probably have to just select them individually, like select the first one. And go down to the bottom, like shift select, no. And then scroll down. No. Scroll. There, we're gonna shift select. Now hit the button. Yeah. There you go. Now you need a vote.
Oh, no.
Well, it's in there somewhere. So,
I find it over here, maybe. That's.
yeah, take up, minimize the lighting. And then, there you go. And then Left, right, and also you're four probably need. Hey, look at that, you got some water in there, nice.
Yeah.
Now, there's a really cool buoyancy, there's a really cool buoyancy thing where you can like drop the boat in and have it like.
Oh my God, I wish I knew that like 2 years ago when for one of my portfolio animations was. The first scene was in a boat, like in a rowboat, it was first person. And I spent a week just like
Animating
frame by
that.
frame animating it going up and down on the waves.
Yeah,
That's too fast when I amazing where I am.
But it was in Blender and I don't think they have a buoyancy modifier, so that's my defense.
I'm sure there's a plug-in for it.
plug in
somewhere.
for it,
Sure,
there
plug in.
probably is,
It's under.
yeah.
What I've learned about Blender plugins is that they always come out after I no longer need to use them.
There it is.
There it is, all right, you got this, right mouse click W. And you're gonna help you out here.
I'm struggling because I'm used to using a Mac as well.
Oh,
So,
Mac, well, that explains, now that explains
like
all
the
the things.
scrolling and all of that.
My own composition.
And yeah, so I'm used to the Maya controls on a Mac, which is somewhat the same, but also.
So- Yeah, this is. Back here. Where's your? Question I have is, why is your control rig way out there? Like, how did you animate that?
It was on a boat.
Done, but when you started? Oh, there it is. I just need to click on it. Yeah, sometimes it has some weird kind of like update things. All right. So then we have this, we'll create a camera. And in this camera, like, set some keyframes, we'll hit S. I'm good here. Let's see if this is even working. Yeah, there we go.
It's frustrating because I don't know where it went, but the camera movement the last time was really good.
Yeah, I don't. Not sure what happened to that,
Doing it on
but for right now. I mean, you can always play with it later and then do a sequence. Just change that instead of JPEG. Fill that. Setting. G. PNG, and then you can just tell it where you want it to. Where you want it to land.
Oh,
You select it, okay, and then you can just hit accept. And record level, not like that, yeah.
going on the boat isn't there.
So you have camera but no boat.
Let's see if you.
3D animation is fun.
3D animation is fun.
So fun.
It's so fun.
Hard.
It only gets more from here, not better or worse, just more.
Yeah, if it only gets. It's really satisfying when figure out your problem, like, find out the way to get it to work right.
Yeah.
That's like life.
I love solving problems.
All in the same boat. We're all in the same boat.
You already did
It's
that.
sink or swim.
Oh, no. Drowning in stupid puns right now.
Yeah, so this is something.
I said drowning.
I'm gonna have to
I said
figure out.
we're drowning,
what
that's the
I-
fun.
It was just bad,
Wow.
and it wasn't bad in a fun way, Indigo. Sorry.
You suck. There's no fun.
So luckily enough, I'm going to Unreal, I'm going to the Unreal, conference this week, actually, coming up, so.
So cool.
So I'll find out, I'll put that, I have a list of questions that I get to ask the developers, so.
Thank you.
Be like, why?
I do have another, like, unrelated question, well, still related to 3D animation. So last year in high school, I took a dual enrollment class that was at a community college. And it was the equivalent of 3D modeling one, like according to RIT, for credit and count
Uh-huh.
transfer.
Uh-huh.
But I don't want to transfer it, like, if there's stuff that's gonna be in that class that I like need to know, I
Sure.
don't wanna miss anything.
Yep.
So if you wouldn't mind, like, maybe like looking at some of my work or something, or just letting me know, like.
Was it in Maya?
Yeah. in
Oh,
my-
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, you can just shoot me an email. and
Yeah.
Send
And I-
me a link to your portfolio.
Yeah, I can just send you like a YouTube link or something.
That'll work, yep. Okay, so just to kind of close out here, I wanna, when I close all of this out, like I said, Unreal is is project-based. So, so when we have our projects in here, so under my desktop, I would want to take this entire thing. So this entire thing has all of the things that make up that project. If you want to be able to open it, you don't just want to save this test tech, your project in it. This is the thing that will open it up, but it's going to need all of these supporting files that are in here. Okay. If you're ever looking for your content, like the stuff that you imported, that's going to be in this content folder. And that, see, here is our rig and all of our stuff. It converts everything to U assets. So that's where that goes. Okay. So when you want to save your stuff, make sure that you aren't just saving any one of these folders or just saving this one thing. You want to bring the entire thing with you. My recommendation, these things can get big. My recommendation is to just right mouse click on it and do a 7-zip on it. So do a add 7-zip. And if you don't know about 7-zip, it's like regular zip files, but they're much smaller than regular zip files. So they upload and download faster.
Are they any more or less secure?
No. No. Just it's a different compression algorithm. But it's a better, faster one. So these things, like I said, they can get pretty big. And so you definitely want to do that. All right. Well, thank you guys for coming. It's been a pleasure
Yeah, thank you.
meeting all of you, and I'm glad that you dropped in to say hey and learn a whole bunch of stuff and make your brains bleed.
Yeah.
First.
You help run the virtual production program, right?
I do, yeah.
Yes. I'm very interested in that. I've been
Okay.
interested since yeah.
All right, yeah. I don't actually run the class, but I help kind of keep all of the things connected so the class can run along with Skip. So
Yeah. Right, yeah, Skip,
he's the instructor on record for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, it was nice to meet you.
yeah, nice to meet you too. Definitely gonna be seeing you a lot.
I will be around. All right. I'm gonna save this.
I gotta go to Applebee's.
Yeah.
With Olivia's parents.
Oh, yeah.
I wanna go.
I have to go too, but I have to finish my work. I'm sorry, I haven't been reading any.
Well, I mean, we're not in a rush. I still have to get ready and stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Indigo still has to shower.
yeah. So.
Okay, see you later.
Yeah. Thanks for the.
See ya.
for The drop in session.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
No
It was
worries.
really nice to meet you.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's good to meet you too. Kayla, hi, I'm Mark.
There's so many types of
Copy.
things out there.
All right, and I am going to boogie on out of here.
Living here.